Please.
Okay.
Chunling.
Thank you, Mark, introduced me. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to visit here, Aleksanteri Institute, and meet many researchers, students, and also visiting scholars. And I'm also happy with Mark to do some joint work for joint articles compared to China and Russia. Although I'm not an expert on Russian studies, I know Russia a little. I just studied in China. But now, recent years, we have a comparative project. So I try to learn something about Russia. So, but I think that everyone here is learn Russia than me. So I want to listen your comments about my research. And now today I want to talk about research my colleagues and I did recently. That is a comparative research on Chinese and Russian middle class. So why we compare China with Russia? China and Russia have a very different history and cultural tradition. However, two countries have showed recently some similar trends in political and socio-economic changes. As the major emerging economies and world powers, two countries have been playing an increasingly important role in global and regional economy and politics. As transition countries from communism to the market economy, two countries have been experiencing social, economical, and political changes. The two countries had a fast economic growth during the first decade of 21st century, but now have suffered economical slowdown and some problems. And in recent decade, China and Russia have been facing increasingly economic and political pressure from the Western countries, which has brought about a strong dream of national rejuvenation in public and an increasing support for powerful political leadership and authoritarianism. So that is the major background. We do comparative research between China and Russia. Why research middle class? High-speed economic growth has brought about a common social phenomenon in two countries, a rising middle class. Although Chinese and Russian middle class have experienced very different historical trajectory. In Russia, there were already a modern middle class during the Soviet Union, but this middle class had suffered heavy damage in the economic recession during 1990s and have restored with high-speed economic growth since the beginning of 21st century. In China, the modern middle class is a new emergent social class with high-speed economic growth, fast industrialization and urbanization in the 21st century. The governments of both countries have made the growing middle class as a policy target for social development. Rising middle class as an important symbol of social achievements such as reducing poverty and improving people's living standards in public opinion of the two countries. At the same time, rising middle class has been playing a positive role in economic growth and political stability in the two countries over the past 2 decades. Many political scientists from the Western countries have long been predicting or expecting Chinese middle class and the Russian middle class as a social force to promote political democracy in these two countries. However, middle class of these two countries have displayed somewhat support for authoritarian regime over the past 2 decades, although they usually show more pro-democracy than other social classes. So it seems contradictory attitudes of Chinese and the Russian middle class, pro-democracy and support for powerful political leadership. The middle class will guide the future direction of the countries. So what is the choice of the middle class in the future? That is an important issue for two countries. So that is why we are running this comparative research. Sociologists from Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CAS, that is my academy, and the Russia Academy of Sciences, RAS, started in 2015 a comparative research on Chinese and Russian middle class. This research is based on national surveys of different periods conducted by CAS and the RAS. This research is trying to explore the new changes of the middle class under the recent economic slowdown. So far, the research have not completed, and my talk just show a preliminary introduction. So the first things for comparative research is to make sure the criteria to define the middle class. You know, many different concepts of middle class. We use different perspectives to define the middle class: sociological perspectives and economical perspectives. Sociological perspectives, usually the sociological concept of middle class is usually define the middle class by occupation classification. In general, the middle class are the white-collar workers, sometimes with some other criteria. So this concept is called as occupation-based middle class. In Russia, colleagues use 4 criteria to define the middle class. It's occupation, education, income, and status identities. That means the Russian middle class are the white-collar workers with high education and middle and high income. China, we use a similar concept, use the 3 criteria: occupation, education, and income. And use this concept, by the survey date, we estimated how much the middle class in 2 countries. The proportion of Russian middle class among the population is about 40%, and China's proportion is about 25%. Russia has a large middle class than China. We want to know the situation of the occupational-based middle class, especially their political attitude. Our previous surveys in 2008 show that middle class of both countries display quite high support for an existing authoritarian regime because middle class are big beneficiaries from the high-speed economic growth under the regime. But how about now? Since 2008, economic growth of two countries have slowed down, and the middle class have no longer been happy-go-lucky beneficiaries. They have been begin to worry about the future. So our survey data show a significant decline in the confidence of middle class in the future in recent years because of economic slowdown. In China's survey, we asked her two questions in survey of different years. One is, have your family living standards improved over the past 5 years? Second question is, do you think your family living standards will continue to improve in the next 5 years? So you can look at very high percentages of Chinese middle class say, yes, their family living standards improved over the past 5 years. In 2006, about 75% of Chinese middle class say their living conditions improved in the past 5 years. In 2008, also very high, 76. 2011, 72%, and 2013 is 78%, very high. But in 2015, drop significantly, it's 8%. So that is because economical slowdown. And also the percentage of middle class say they expect their living condition is continue to increase in the future 5 years. 70% in 2006, 63% in 2008 because the financial crisis is decline, but then continue to increase. But we know data in 2015. That is because now the economic is very good, so Chinese government don't like such questions in national survey. So in 2015 survey, we did not ask her the question, what is expect your future living standard, living conditions. So, but other researchers show that is also decline. For the Russia survey, they ask similar questions, but a little different is the Russia survey question is, have your family living standards have improved over the past 12 months? There's 1 year. And other question is, do you think your family living standards will continue to improve in next 12 months? The percentage of Russian middle class say yes is much lower than China. But in 2006, 2008 is quite high, it's about 31%. And then declined to 2015. It's a decline. So That show is in recent years because of economic slowdown. Middle class of two countries show a worry about the future. And then another data showed, yes, that the citizens worry about losing their job has also increased. In Russia, the percentage of middle class expressing worry about their employment stability increased from 49.9% in 2006 to 63.3% in 2016. In China, this percentage has a slight increase in 2017. So that shows that economical safety of middle class is declining. So Chinese and Russian middle class has feeling more and more economical risks. However, our survey data find that the middle class of two countries have a high economical security than counterparts in most other countries, because Chinese and the Russian middle class have very high home ownership rates and less family debt. Both Chinese and Russian middle class have very high home ownership rates. 93% of Chinese middle class and 92% of Russian middle class have their own houses, which is much higher than in most Western countries. About 1/3 of Russian middle class have a second house. Most are farmer house in the suburb. In China, nearly 1/7 of middle class have a second house. Most are apartments in cities. In addition, 2% of Chinese middle class and 5% of Russian middle class have 3 or more houses. At the same time, 35% of Russian middle class have family debt, including the mortgage, which is much higher than the ratio of Chinese middle class, 10%, but lower than US and other most European countries. So even though middle class worry about the future and fear more economical security under the economic slowdown, high rate of home ownership and low rate of family debt indicate the middle class of the two countries have quite a strong capability to resist against the economic risks during the economic slowdown. And then we want to know their social political attitudes, what they think, what they choose for future direction of the countries. In order to learn something about their social political attitudes, we asked her 3 pairs of questions in national survey of two countries in 2015 about their attitudes in 3 fields. One is preference for social change or social stability. 2 is preference for democracy or authoritarianism. 3rd is preference for Western road or national tradition. In survey, we showed 2 opposite statements and asked respondents which one they agree with. The first pair of the opposite statements is about attitude of social change or stability. Now, here is the China survey question. Here is the Russia survey question. It's clear. I don't know. It's very small. characters. For Chinese, ask a question for the two opposite statements. One is stability is the most important thing for China. Opposite statement is even with all kinds of risks, China needs social change. The 64% of Chinese middle class prefer stability. Another 36% prefer change. The Russia question is the country needs stability and gradual reform. Opposite statement is the country needs radical social and political change. The 72% of Russia middle class prefer stability, and the other 28% prefer the change. So that shows both countries' middle class prefer more the stability to the change. The second pair of opposite statements is about the attitude of democracy and authoritarianism. The Chinese question is political democracy and freedom are not allowed to be damaged at all times. Opposite is China needs strong government power to maintain national order. 60% the Chinese middle class prefer democracy. 40% prefer to the powerful government. And Russia, the statement is Russia should become a democratic country providing human rights and freedom of speech. Opposite statement is democracy will not remain in Russia. The country needs a strong leader to ensure national order, unity, and sovereignty. 63% of Russian class prefer democracy. Other 37% prefer authoritarian regime. So that although more middle class prefer democracy to authoritarianism, but about 60% versus 40%. That displays a divergence in preference democracy or authoritarianism among Chinese and Russian middle class. Actually, some recent studies find that middle class show contradictory attitudes. On the one hand, they hold democratic value. On the other hand, they think the country needs a powerful leadership to deal with economical risks and compete with Western countries to deal with the pressure with Western countries. So that is contradictory attitudes. So that we just talk about occupation-based middle class. Occupation-based middle class is traditional concept of middle class, which is used for classification for political attitude analysis. However, since the beginning of 21st century, another concept of middle class has been becoming more and more popular. That is income-based middle class, which defines the middle class by income. That is because income distribution and income inequality have become an important factor in affecting the social structure and the people's attitude and the behavior. So we also adopt this concept of middle class, that is economical perspective, income-based middle class. There are two ways to define the middle class by income. One is absolute standards, another is relative standards. We employed relative standards to define the middle class, which is also called as middle income group. So what is the relative standards to define the middle class? That is middle class are the people, they have the income between 75% to 200% of median income. What does it mean? I show you. I show you a chart to explain how to define income-based middle class and what does it mean. That is income distribution of China's working population in 2000. It's 2015, not 2014. So what is the median income? Median income is the red line. In 2015 is about 21,000 Chinese yuan. That means 50% person have lower income than the median income. Another 50% people have a high income than the median income. So the relative standard method to define the middle class is if a person has the income between 75% of median income to and 200% of median income. That this range, that is income based middle class. They stay here. But what does it mean if a larger middle class or small middle class? The different portion of middle class reflects a different level of income inequality in a society. This chart illustrates a relationship between middle class and income inequality of three countries. Sweden, Nordic country, they are very low income inequality, and the Gini coefficient is very small, about 25%, and very few people are rich people and high income, and also very few people in poverty and low income. So most people have income near the median income. So Sweden has very large population middle in the middle class. It's about 40%. I think Finland is in a similar situation. And the US has a higher income inequality. The Gini coefficient is much higher than Sweden. It's about 35%. And so, more people in the rich and high income, and also more people in the lower income. So the last population near the median income. So the middle class, the proportion is smaller than Sweden. It's about 58%. Brazil, Brazil, very high Gini coefficient. It's that shown it's many years ago, but now Gini coefficient in Brazil is about 53 or 5%. So in Brazil, it's more people in a very high, rich, and huge population in poverty and low income. So the middle class is very small. The Russia situation, the middle class proportion is similar to US. China is similar to Brazil, but China not so much higher in the Gini coefficient. Now it's about 43, 45, that. But we look at China and Russia. So our survey date 2015, we compare to the proportion of middle class income based middle class in 2 countries. We classify 6 income group: the rich, the high, the rich, high income, high middle income, low middle income, low income, and poverty. People with the high middle income and the low middle income are the middle class. That is the people, they income between 75% and 200% of the median income. China has a small proportion of middle class, about 38%. Then Russia is large, it is 56%. At the same time, China has a larger proportion of rich and high income, and also large poverty than Russia. So that reflects China has much high income inequality, more rich people and more poor people, and a smaller middle class than Russia. So that is similar, the Gini coefficient, the 2 countries. This blue line is China, red line is Russia. So most of the time, here is a different year, from 1981 to 2017. So most of the years, China has a high Gini coefficient than Russia. Only in the early 1990s, that is because the economic recession in Russia. So long time, China has large income inequality. So that figure shows the proportion of middle class among the population in different years, 2 countries. Because of China has a high Gini coefficient, high income inequality, so the proportion of middle class is much smaller than Russia. The red line is Russia, the blue line is China. In different year, the proportion of middle class. However, we find interesting thing. The proportion in different is different in different year. We find economic growth rate has significant impact on the proportion of Russian middle class. The shrink of the Russian middle class usually happened when the economic growth was in drop, such as in 2009 and 2015. For the Chinese middle class, income inequality has a large impact on the proportion. The proportion of middle class in China was continued to decrease during 1990s and the first decade of this century. That is because the Gini coefficient kept increased during this period, although the economic growth rate was very high. And every income increased in this period. The proportion began to increase from 2008 to 2013. In this period, the Gini coefficient was decreased. However, when Gini coefficient increased again in 2016 and 2017, the proportion was decreased. So besides the Gini coefficient and the income inequality has an impact on, also the economic growth has an impact on the growth of the middle class. Another important factor is that Russia has a larger middle class than China. That is the difference in the socio-economic development of two countries. Russia is a developed country. China is a developing country. Russia joined a group of high-income countries in 2012. China joined a group of middle-income countries in 2010. So China is a middle-income country. Russia is a high-income country. Russia has completed industrialization and urbanization, and it's transforming into a post-industrialized society. China is undergoing industrialization and urbanization. And also China has a much rural population than Russia. Russia has a 74% urban population and 26% rural population. China has a 56% urban population and 44% rural population. And also Russians has a high average education than Chinese. 89% of Russian population aged, the young people, completed high school education, and 55% completed higher education. China, only 60% of Chinese population of the young group completed high school education, and 36% completed higher education. So that is a difference between China and Russia. So that is the GDP per capita, two countries. Russia, the red line, is higher than China in different years. It's remain the gap between countries. Although China has a high GDP growth rate, but even China has a very fast GDP growth rate, but the per capita GDP is remain in a large gap. We just saw Russia has a larger income-based middle class than China in the context of domestic income distribution. But if we move into global income distribution, there is totally a different picture. I show you two chapters published by the World Income Report 2018. This chart is the global income distribution in 1990s. The horizontal axis is the income group from the lowest income to the top income. The lowest income is here is the lowest 1%. Here is 1% lowest income. Here is top 0.001%, the highest income. So that is the distribution. This vertical axis is the proportion of the population from different countries. The red is China. So red is China, the yellow is India, and this color is Russia. So in 1990, the majority of the low-income population are Chinese and Indians. Russia, most Russians, they stay in, I think it's up middle income. They stay here. And very, very few, I think almost no Chinese and Indians stay in the top. But Russia has a few people in the top. But in 2016, it's different. Chinese people, a large part of Chinese people up moves in the middle, and also India have the move. But how about Russia? Russia, some parts of the Russians move down from the up middle into the low middle. And also some of Chinese people become the rich, top rich. And also some Russians became the top rich. Then this figure lists income growth of different income groups in different countries from 1980 to 1960s. In Russia, the income growth of for the total population during this period from 1980s to now is only their income growth is only 34%. Here is 34%. It's lower than average level of world. Here is no word. Income growth of bottom of 50% people is negative. So that means their income is lower than they had in the 1980s. And middle 40%, their income just grows 5%, very, very few. So the middle 40% is a middle class. So Russian middle class, they just recover from the recession back to the 1980s the level. And also the top 10, the growth is 190%. It's also not large compared to other countries. But the super rich, the very high percent is a top 0.001% highest income. I'm surprised. It's very terrible. Their income growth is 25,000%, and this figure is much larger than other countries. Even China and India, the super rich, their income increased very quickly, but just 3,000 percentage. But Russia is terrible, the larger, bigger. China is different from Russia. So China, the full population, very high growth, about 800%. It's much higher than average, world average, and also much higher than other countries. And also about 50%, also 400%. That means 4 times their income. And the middle class is about 800. So it's okay, it's very good. Although the top have much high growth, but compared to Russia, it's a bad situation. So now we compare to income distribution in domestic situation. Russia is just a few people, the rich, the super rich, they gained much, but most population, they just back to before recession. It's just stable. Most people not large the gap, the income gap, just quite similar. So the Gini coefficient is small. China, there is almost people, their income increased quickly. Although the top, they grow fast, then middle, and the middle fast, then the low. But every people, their income grows. Although the Gini coefficient increased, but middle class, they are big gainer, the winners. Another figure show is the difference between China and Russia is the Chinese middle class have accumulated much more wealth with the income growth than Russian middle class. You know, Chinese like save money. They accumulate their wealth, family wealth. So we're talking about a different concept of middle class. One concept defining the middle class is buying wealth, family wealth, or individual wealth. So that is wealth-based middle class. This chapter is from the Global Wealth Report 2015, released by the Credit Suisse Research Institute. This report estimated the number of global middle class based on the individual wealth. The wealth is between $50,000 to $500. So if you have such kind of wealth, you are the global middle class. The report estimates there are about 600 million adults belong to the global middle class in 2015. And China has the largest middle class. The number is 109 million members, surpassing the USA. The USA is 92. And surpassing the Japan. Japan is 62. So China has a large, wealthy middle class. The middle class, they have a lot of family wealth. Russia is the number is 5 million. 5 million. So, although China has a larger member of the wealthy middle class, that is because China has a huge population. But the proportion of the wealthy middle class among the population is low. China is about 11% of the middle class, the wealthy middle class among the adult population. I'm surprised in Russia, only 4%. You know why? I guess maybe that is because the Russian currency devaluation. So the family wealth devaluation. I don't know why. In Russia, there is very low proportion. And then I just show you some data. So I want to conclusion. The conclusion, one, I'm trying to find some similarity and disparity. Similarity, I think it's the political the tendency. Now, one is contradictory attitude towards the democracy and authoritarianism. And we compare to the different years the data. We find this tendency increased in recent years. I think maybe it's because two countries have facing more and more more and more the pressure from Western countries with using the European country and national the US. So there's some nationalism increased. And another similar tendency is preference stability than the change. And also similarity is preference the national tradition. I'm talking about the nationalism in the two countries, and also the middle class. Disparity is showed in economical situation. Russian middle class, they recover from the recession of 1990s. Economical situation improved steadily, but not grow fast. In the context of less income gap. The Chinese middle class has been rising fast. Their income and wealth grows largely in the context of large income gap. That results difference in the personality of Chinese and the Russian middle class. Chinese middle class show more ambitions and materialist. The Chinese middle class like to work hard, earn more money, buy large house and buy luxury cars and other some things like. But the Russian middle class less materialist and more interesting in the culture, spiritual pursuit, I think. So that is, I find some similarities and disparities. And conclusion 2 is challenger on the economic slowdown. So the fast economic growth has been promoting the expansion of Chinese middle class, but high economic inequality is restricting its development. Now, Russia has a larger middle class, but the economic instability is impeding its growth. Since the 2008 economic crisis, both countries have suffered economic slowdown or economic risk crisis that caused some negative impact on the development of the middle class. The middle class has been facing increasingly economic risks and uncertainties, slowdown in income growth, and worry about their social security. Economic risks and political pressure make them more inclined to political authoritarianism and anti-Western sentiments. So that's all. Thank you.